To most, it is the Oklahoma wilderness, almost a foreign country. Most imagine colorless scenery, colorless people, and cold, dusty, unyielding winds. But that is not the Panhandle its people know. As the sun rises across the Panhandle, it illuminates a countryside that is a picture book of scenery.
We're 4,500 feet above sea level. We're closer to Denver than we are Oklahoma City. We're in the mountain time zone, and we're still in Oklahoma.
The sometimes rugged, sometimes flat and prosperous land is ideal setting for the fiercely independent families that have called the Panhandle home for generations. Truman Tucker rode to the Panhandle in a covered wagon with his parents 80 years ago. His still feisty spirit keeps him tramping the hills of the mysterious Black Mesa. The Black Mesa was formed ages ago when lava poured over the land. Erosion took the soil but left the hard lava top. Truman has spent a lifetime walking the 45 miles of the mesa, finding its secrets.
Right here, just stood there.
There's three-toed tracks. You can see there's the three toes.
These are the tracks of a dinosaur. Scientists say they are as old as 350 million years. Truman says as old as creation.
There's one fellow that said it's from Denver, said there's the most that ever found in a sequence like this. And there's another one or two places in the world besides this that they knew of.
In these hills, the rich history of the Panhandle unfolds.
Well, they had it here where they could see. They could see up this stream, or they could see down the river or up the river. They could see for miles in every direction.
The hills hid outlaws, robbers running from the cannons of the Union Army, an infamous beginning. At the gateway of the Panhandle stands a monument against the sky, a memory of the history that not only formed the land, but its people as well.
It was called no man's land there. There wasn't any. Not many people here, no fences, no roads, no law. It was just a piece of the country to hold the world together, and they tried to graft it onto Texas, but Texas didn't want it because Texas was already a state, and they tried to give it to Kansas, but Kansas was already a state, and they didn't want it either, so they stuck it on Oklahoma because Oklahoma was a territory and they didn't have enough will to resist.
That rejection formed a people of fierce independence that stands today, but that rejection still festers as a sore in the hearts of the people, a sore that won't heal. That frustration tomorrow. From the Panhandle, Jane Braden, 5 Alive News.
You got to remember that there's no one that wanted the Panhandle. No state. Kansas didn't want it, Texas didn't want it, Colorado or New Mexico. None of them wanted it.
Many folks in the Panhandle believe Oklahoma doesn't want them either. A spirit of isolation is growing and dividing.
We sometimes feel that they treat us like poor stepchildren out here, which we certainly aren't.
The folks here in the Panhandle say they're surrounded by 5 hostile states: Kansas, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and Oklahoma. They feel separated and rejected by the rest of the state.
Distance divides. Panhandle shoppers rummage through the nearby store racks of many states, just 20 to 40 miles away. It's too difficult to drive hundreds of miles to larger Oklahoma cities.
We have a rather unique trade territory. On any given day, we'll go through our receipts and checks, and we'll have checks from Colorado, New Mexico, Kansas, Texas, and also Oklahoma.
Here's what's happening in Texas tonight. This diet doctor is on trial for allegedly...
The only TV news in this part of Oklahoma is from Texas, or a 3-antenna boost from the Oklahoma Educational TV. One daily Guyman paper reports the local news, no downstate news, and one Oklahoma City daily reaches this far, but the people feel the news is often stale by the time it gets here. In reverse, the news from the Panhandle downstate is often distorted. Panhandlers say their bad weather reputation of bitter snow, biting wind, is unearned.
I've been downstate on many occasions, and they complain about the weather in the Panhandle, and it just isn't so. So we're a little bit defensive about that.
Ironically, however, the billboard outside Guyman, which reads, "Guyman, home of the most lied about weather in the U.S., was blown down by storms the night before we saw it." Being out of touch divides. So some talk about making the division official, secession. The idea is half joke, half serious frustration. The Oklahoma and Texas panhandles seceding to make a new state, with Amarillo as capital.
So we do feel, in a sense, isolated from the rest of the state and more a part of what's going on in the high plains of Texas.
I have supported it. I think it would be very good. I don't know how much red tape, so to speak, and everything it would take, but it might relieve some of the problems of the Panhandle area, feeling like we're a stepchild to Oklahoma City when it seems all they want are tax dollars and want to take everything and not give us anything.
How the Panhandle gives and downstate takes tomorrow. From the Panhandle, Jane Braden, 5 Alive News. The Oklahoma Panhandle preserves a vision of our state as the pioneers saw it. But now those pioneers' descendants are building a new vision.
We happen to be located right on top of two things that nobody could see at that time: the Hugoton gas field, which is one of the largest natural gas production areas in the world, and the Ogallala Water Formation. And the gas supplies the power to turn the pumps to pump the water out of the Ogallala, and it's made what once was the Dust Bowl into one of the finest productive areas in the nation, and certainly one of the most productive parts of Oklahoma.
The Panhandle is storehouse of Oklahoma's natural abundance. It's gas and oil, grains and cattle. Natural gas pipes hum with the sounds of that abundance. The Hugoton gas field is the second largest in the world.
This is one of the biggest areas in the United States. It's under what they call the Hugoton field, which goes from up in southwest Kansas through the Oklahoma Panhandle and takes in a portion of the North Texas Panhandle.
Churning oil wells also pull nature's wealth from this no man's land. Herds of cattle span miles across the Panhandle, bringing up profits for their owners. The dry, high climate is just right for feeding cattle. Huge feedlots fatten 75% of Oklahoma's cattle, and much of the rest of the country's, too.
Out here, it's cattle feeding because we have the irrigation, which supplies a ready supply of feedstuff, and we have a good high-dry climate, and you bring the irrigation and the supply of feedstuff together with a good climate for feeding cattle that's dry, and the cattle feeding industry has gotten quite big and is quite big, and it's important to us.
But it's the rancher who is the real heir of the Panhandle tradition.
Don't believe it. The weeds are destroying it yet.
Constantly at war with the dry climate and whims of nature, to furrow out another generation's livelihood from the land.
If you haven't got grain production, you haven't got much anything out in this country, because that's about the only thing you can raise. We don't have enough moisture to raise a lot of variety of crops, so we have to raise wheat and milo is the dryland crops that we raise.
Oklahoma's #1 corn crop is in the Panhandle, along with miles of almost unending sorghum and wheat. But the vision of these 4th and 5th generation families is threatened.
And we have a tax base that we feel is better than other counties in this state. And we don't feel that other counties should shun their ad valorem tax base and acquire some of our gross production tax. We don't believe that's so. So this is a very important issue to us.
But many times that money that goes for those projects doesn't quite ever make it out to the Panhandle, precisely because we run out of voters out here.
Their greatest worry is about the most precious resource these people have, their children, their future. Wealth has built fine schools out here, and schools downstate want to share that wealth.
We've always had the things that you see here, and we've been able to give those things to our kids. If they take our money and spread it over the entire rest of the state, how much more is that going to improve anybody else while it tears us down?
Economics are taking the children away. 80% will probably eventually leave the Panhandle just to find jobs. The Panhandle lives off its oil, gas, wheat, and cattle, but it survives even through the economic dim from the spirit of its people.
There's an old saying out here that once you wear out your first pair of boots, you'll never be able to leave. And despite the economic ups and downs, the folks that call this land home say they feel there's a bright future here.
The farming is a independent way of life. You're your own boss, and we're used to not very many people, and it's just a good country to live in. Good place to raise your kids. Well, my granddad come out here to start with, and then my dad, and now it's me and my son, so I guess we'll be here forever.
From the Panhandle, Jane Braden, 5 Alive News.